Bagging ammo. I'm trying to figure out why they can't leave me alone. What's good, YouTube? It's your boy Thtman.x, and as you see, I'm back with another reaction video. And today we are reacting to "The World is Turning on Israel." The world is turning on Israel. I haven't really been too in tune with Israel, but from what I'm seeing, I believe this type of stuff is like very biblical. You know what I mean? I gotta read, but I believe that this stuff that I'm seeing is biblical. But I would have to go read more. I haven't been reading stuff about this, but hey, man, the world is turning on Israel. Every time I look around, is Israel hate. Israel. We're going to see why the world's turning on Israel. This is my first time watching this video. It's my first time really giving like a real deep dive into this. So, like, comment, subscribe. We're going to see why everybody turned on Israel. Dead on.
So there is this map that I want to show you.
Okay.
This is actually from November 2011, when the United Nations held a big vote about Palestine, and we'll get to what that was in a second. These are the countries that backed Israel in voting no, and these countries abstained, which was basically the same thing. What you're looking at here is the pro-Israel world as of 2011. That's a lot mostly of Western countries and small nations that depend on them. These are the governments that arm Israel's military, that support it diplomatically, that shield it from international pressure. And to understand how far that support went, it helps to look at what that 2011 UN vote, the map, was actually for. This is a UN agency called UNESCO. That name stands for Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, and they do like events and educational grants. Okay. It's all very benign and boring. The Palestinian government asked to join it, and from the UN's perspective, yeah, no big deal. The UN resolution that established Israel back in 1947 also called for an independent Arab state in Palestine. So, according to the UN, Palestine is a state just as much as Israel. It should be allowed to join this nice cultural agency. But Israel opposed this because they did not want anything that legitimized the idea of Palestine as a state. And these 65 countries sided with Israel. That's how far they went for them. But that was 2011. Check out what one of those blue countries is up to today. This is Italy's Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni.
Italy has criticized Israeli attacks peacekeepers there.
In light of the current situation, the government has decided to suspend the automatic renewal of the defense agreement with Israel.
This is a huge pivot, and this kind of thing has been happening a lot. Israel's backers, that network of countries that have been supporting it for decades, they've been kind of turning on it, one by one, often in small ways, but it is adding up. Today, we're going to look at what all of that is adding up to. We're going to ask what this means for Israel and what happens when the international support it's long counted on to do everything that it does starts to look like it could really go away. So I'm going to give away the ending slightly here and tell you that Israel has actually been quietly preparing for years now a plan for what to do if and when it loses the international support it relies on. We'll also look at why this is happening now and what it means that it is. But we'll begin by simply going through country by country on the map what is changing here. Starting early 2024, the height of Israel's war in Gaza. Experts were calling it genocide. The International Criminal Court was preparing charges for war crimes. And that April, the UN did what it does. It held a symbolic, non-binding vote. This one, on admission of new members, that said, in theory, Palestine was qualified for membership. In other words, to be recognized as a state. The US had vetoed that, though, so all this actually changed was where the powerless Palestinian representative was seated in the UN Assembly Room. Still, this was a chance for countries to take a side. And a lot of them that had long sided with Israel used this vote to signal that that was kind of over. Look at that map again.
So they showed that, okay, they don't care about, oh, dang, that's a lot of people.
Voting with Israel back in 2011 to voting against it in 2024. Australia, New Zealand, important Western countries. Japan and South Korea, major economies, usually vote with the West. A bunch of countries in Africa and the Caribbean that rely on Western support. A few other big ones. But also, and this was a big deal, a bunch of Europe. Denmark, Poland, Portugal, Estonia, plus a couple more. So, look, Denmark and Poland, I know, they're not exactly the biggest world powers, but Europe collectively is Israel's biggest trading partner. It's their biggest source of tourists. It's their second biggest supplier of weapons after the United States. Europe is what
big
expands
weapon.
the pro-Israel sphere from a niche American thing into a broad Western coalition. So
Okay,
any
okay.
chip...
If I'm being honest, this person, he spent 4 minutes and 5 seconds talking, and it all went one ear out the other. I'm gonna keep it on it. Like, I was trying to listen, but I really didn't listen to none of this. And I'm not gonna like go back. But I'm gonna try my best to listen now. But I'm not gonna lie. I know that there was countries that was with them in 2011, and then now they're not with them. They want supplies and the weapons and all that. They got big weapons, and I wasn't listening, bro.
And that, it's a big deal. And then, 2026, the Iran war hits.
The U.S. and Israel have launched strikes and a major military operation targeting Iran.
The Ayatollah, the supreme leader
there
of
people in that
strikes and
2026, the Iran war hits.
the U.S. and Israel have launched strikes and a major military operation targeting Iran.
The Ayatollah, the supreme leader of Iran.
Oh yeah, he got bombed.
For the
Yeah,
first
I
time
seen.
in
I
history,
remember that. Yeah,
Iranian
they bombed
officials
him.
say the country has closed the Strait of Hormuz
Bomb and a
following
rip.
joint strikes from the U.S. and Israel.
Which didn't just defend sensibilities and values in Europe.
Okay,
it really
I do
messed
know
up their
about this. I
economies.
forgot.
The
It was
country
getting
is
wicked though.
facing widespread disruption as fuel
We were
protests
dropping bombs on people and all
continue,
that. I forgot
with
about that.
major roads blocked and shortages beginning to emerge.
So pretty soon you got stuff like this.
Il est évident qu'il nous faut pouvoir hausser le ton dans les sanctions.
This is Belgium's foreign minister.
Suspension à tout le moins partielle de l'accord d'association entre Israël
Bro, give me
et
subtitles, bro.
l'Union
Oh, they're right
européenne.
here.
He is talking about trade sanctions on Israel, the kind of thing you do to a hostile rogue state. He even went on to say that Belgium would support a total EU boycott. Here, let's zoom in on Europe, because it's not just Belgium. Spain, Ireland, and Slovenia are also calling for the EU to sanction Israel. Ukraine threatened sanctions too, over Israel importing grain from its Russian-occupied territory. Israel stopped the stolen grain import, but the threat is still hanging. Also remember, we saw that Italy suspended a defense cooperation deal. But the really big turn has been France. France recently closed its airspace to Israeli flights carrying weapon shipments. It's a symbolic step, sure, but a big enough warning shot that Israel, in response, halted all arms purchases from France. This is a real loss for Israel. French weapons make up a ton of Israel's imports. Like, check this out. You can see it here. This is the EU data for every European arms sale.
Okay, I'm
and if you
looking.
look at the top arms sales to Israel, a ton of them are from France. Like,
That's true.
all the biggest ones. You almost wonder if
Yeah.
Israel did this to preempt France from doing it first. You know, you can't break
My
up with me, I
ear.
break up with you. Anyway, the point is, this is effectively a quasi-self-imposed French arms embargo on Israel, which joins a Spanish arms embargo imposed a few months earlier. So, yeah, this is Europe on Israel today. You can see it's a pretty meaningful pivot. But now we
Right.
gotta talk about the US.
The time is now for us to end
Ain't that Joe Biden?
all U.S. military aid.
Just give it up, man. Cut the hair.
extremist Netanyahu government.
This is Senator Bernie Sanders recently.
Bernie Sanders, I
introducing
forgot.
a
I said Joe
resolution
Biden.
That would
Damn. Oh, damn. Hey, Joe Budden, a podcaster? Damn, I'm slow. I know I knew his face. I remember I seen him in the 4th grade. Damn, I'm slow. Damn.
block all U.S. arms sales to Israel. It did not pass, but it was closer than you might guess, 40 to 59.
On this vote, the yeas are 40, the nays 59. The motion is not agreed to.
And like the UN votes or the EU threats, this was about sending a signal. 40 U.S. senators voted for an arms embargo. That is a message that almost half of the American political system is ready to really turn on Israel. And that's not just a signal to Israel, which, let's face it, seems unlikely to change behavior. It's a signal to all of these other countries that global pro-Israel coalition is getting closer and closer to breaking apart. So it's time to ask why. Why now? The simplest explanation would be that this is all in reaction to Gaza and to the Iran war. But I think the truth is that those things are just catalysts, pushing along a change that's been building for a long time now. This is a foreign policy article warning Israel that it lost Europe. But what's interesting about this is that it's from 2012.
Right.
One of the things they were reacting to was that 2011 UN vote we looked at before. What
Right.
looks to us now like it had been a big pro-Israel wave in Europe at the time it looked like Europe turning on Israel. And this makes more sense if we rewind a few years more to 2008. This is German leader Angela Merkel speaking to Israel's parliament. And she said basically, we will support you forever because of the Holocaust.
Das heißt, die Sicherheit Israels ist für mich als deutsche Bundeskanzlerin niemals verhandelbar.
But look, it's not just Holocaust guilt behind this. There's a bunch of other stuff, like this sense among democracies worldwide.
Hey, when y'all look at his room, what's been catching y'all attention this whole time? Like, if y'all been watching, like, what about this has been catching y'all attention this whole time? This been my center of attention, like, this whole video. Like, I haven't been looking at him at all. I've been looking at this. I've been thinking, like, man, like, that's pretty sharp. Like, what does he use this for? Like, what is this for specifically? Like, what if you walk wrong or you fall back, and that'd be pretty hard. That hurt a lot. Not gonna lie. This has been the center of my attention. How about y'all? Let me know in the comments.
Why that Israel was a like-minded democracy surrounded by hostile dictatorships.
Yeah.
And since after September 11th, that Israel and the West were on the same side in a global war on terror. Plus, there was some Cold War stuff in there before that. And look, my point is that there's a lot going on in European support for Israel, but it's all anchored to stuff that happened in the past. 1945. Arab-Israeli wars in 67, 73.
Invasion of the Golan Heights by Syria and Egypt.
2001, which means the further that those events drift into memory, the less kind of cultural and political scaffolding there is for that relationship to exist. Especially as Israel does more and more stuff in the present that upsets or hurts or offends its international sponsors. Which is why support for Israel is strongest among older people, whose view of it is rooted in that past. Like, here, look at this. This is Chuck Schumer, the Senate Democratic leader, speaking to AIPAC in 2018.
Of course, we say it's our land. The Torah says it. But they don't believe in the Torah.
No,
so,
we don't.
That's the reason there is not peace. They invent other reasons, but they do not believe in a Jewish state. And that is why we in America must stand strong with Israel through thick and thin.
Schumer is obviously coming to this through a kind of Jewish ethno-nationalism. That's why he specifically supports Israel. But he's drawing on, and for a long time got that support because of, a wider sense across Western countries that Israel is quote-unquote like us. But that feeling, that perception, has been steadily eroding, often slowly but steadily, for as long as I have been writing and reporting on Israel and Palestine. Every year, people learn more about Israel's occupation, the settlements, the treatment of Israeli Arabs. And it gets harder and harder to recognize the Israel that we see with our eyes to the Israel that we have been told was this foothold of Western democratic values. And big moments like Gaza or Iran tend to generate a lot of intention that accelerates that shift. This is a recent NBC poll of Americans by age. The green bars measure positive views on Israel, and the yellow bars are negative views. When NBC first ran this back in 2023, older Americans had overwhelmingly positive views of Israel, people my age were more mixed, and younger people were a bit more negative than positive. Fast forward to today, young Americans have turned on Israel 5-1. My generation, it's 2-1 negative on Israel. Older adults are almost split, and only the oldest are like solidly pro-Israel. That is how you get 40 US senators voting for an arms embargo on a country that not that long ago they'd have all felt obligated to pledge their undying support to. Public opinion has shifted really quickly. That is part of why you see this. World governments that had always supported Israel suddenly starting to pivot. But there are some big holdouts, especially Germany, the UK, and the US. Things are changing within each of those countries, like we talked about in the US, but their leaders are resisting pressure to break with Israel.
Bro, you know what pissed me off about certain like old people, bro? Just go ball game. Like y'all be, if you gonna wear it, bro, you might as well get like a little implant, like a little feng shui. That's what it's called, a little feng shui. Damn, y'all know what I'm trying to say, bro. Like, what do you put on your head, bro? Help me out. Damn. You're just looking at me snap. I'm trying, you know what I mean? Help me. What do you mean you can't help me? You can help me? What do you mean? Like, let me know. Not a wig. It's a different word.
Difficult to imagine a real, meaningful Western break with Israel. But, relative to just 10 or 15 years ago, which is not that long in geopolitical terms, it is already sort of happening in ways that recently would have felt impossible. Hey guys, just wanted to quickly pause to say, if you want to learn more about Israel, why it is the way it is, what it's doing, its place in the world, all of that, head to newpress.com. We'll get to what that was in a second. These are the countries that back... Hey guys, just wanted to quickly journalism that new press leaders know this, which is why they have a whole plan to prepare for the day that the West breaks with them for real. I actually did a bunch of reporting on this plan a few years ago, and what I found is that Israel had quietly achieved a real degree of autonomy from the US. This had a few components. It made peace with a bunch of the countries it used to need American protection from, like Egypt and Saudi Arabia. It learned how to build big weapon systems domestically. So while, yeah, it's happy to take American and European exports, it can replace a lot of them if needed. Israeli voters have also embraced more hardline nationalism. So they no longer really pressure their leaders to keep foreign powers happy the way they used to. And in some ways, they even want their leaders to defy those foreign powers by doing things like expanding settlements. And look, yes, it is still true that Israel has a ton to gain from American and European weapons, funding, and support. Those play a big role in empowering Israel's war. My point is that Israel has built up its autonomy so that holding on to that support is no longer existential for them, which frees them up to defy those countries, even the United States. Which is how you get moments like Trump last year tweeting at Israel to not bomb Iran, which of course they still did. Or this year, Trump tweeting at Israel that it was prohibited from bombing Lebanon, which, you guessed it, they immediately did anyway. But I mentioned at the start of this video that Israel's plan to survive a breakup with the West is only sort of working. One component in particular. I wrote about it back in that article. And it's that Israel has been cultivating new allies, right-wing, illiberal democracies that actually admire the very actions that have been pushing away its more traditional allies.
So
Israeli analysts
they got to determine where
about this called it kind of mockingly the other friends policy.
Oh damn, I ain't mean it
Let me
like
show
that.
you.
I ain't mean it like that though. Like I ain't mean like anybody that wear a turban is a heirist. I didn't mean it like that. I genuinely mean I meant that like they were heirist. You know what I mean? I didn't like if you wear a turban, that don't mean you're one of those, bro. You're not one of those if you wear a turban, but I didn't mean it like that. I'm letting you know, like, so you know I'm not being racist. Like if you wear a turban, I don't mean that you are one of those. I'm just saying, like, that's, like, I ain't had no other name. I didn't want to say the word, so I don't know. What if it got me not copyrighted, like, restricted or something, you know what I mean? I didn't want to do it. I just didn't want to.
On that map, the big ones are India,
2 minutes left,
Brazil, and Hungary, plus a couple others. Countries whose leaders aren't drawn to Israel because of the past, but because of what it is today, as a symbol of unapologetic militarism and ethno-nationalism. And this worked pretty well for a while. Hungary especially was Israel's best friend in the EU, vetoing all sorts of trade restrictions or sanctions that Europe might have otherwise imposed. But after a couple years, it kind of started to fall apart. Israel's buddy in Brazil lost re-election and got sentenced to jail time for a failed coup attempt. And its ally in Hungary lost power too, actually just a few weeks into the Iran war. And the new guy in power there has already said his government would arrest Netanyahu on war crimes charges if he visited Hungary. Better look at that map again. Brazil out, Hungary out. That Israeli diplomatic resurgence is looking pretty short-lived. So what does all this mean? Look, when I started reporting on Israel and its place in the world back in 2010 or 2011, it was honestly unthinkable to me that the Western pro-Israel world would ever cool to it to the extent that it already has. And I know that to a lot of you, especially if you're on the younger side, that probably sounds crazy. Because if you look around you, it looks like the West supports Israel as unreservedly as it ever has. You know, the US just started an entire open-ended global economy-destroying war with Iran, basically as a favor to Israel.
Right.
Western weapons are funding Israel's wars in Gaza and Lebanon. I'm
Right.
not blind. I see all this.
Okay.
But I am telling you, if you
What?
take a step back If you look at the bigger picture, the kind of longer timeline here, that support is starting to look kind of tenuous. We are not talking about a wide and deep pro-Israel consensus across the Western world anymore. We are talking about a handful of countries that are increasingly isolated in backing Israel, led by leaders who are acting in defiance of their publics, their political parties, even their own core supporters. I'm sure you've heard that Hemingway quote, change happens slowly and then all at once. We are in the happen slowly
I've never
part
heard
right
that,
now,
but yeah.
it feels like that all at once is coming up fast.
Right.
We might look back 5-10 years from now and feel that actually it was as of this moment that it was already here.
Hey man, Christ is king, man. I don't know what they got going on, man. I believe in my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Whatever happens, I'm grounded in Jesus Christ. I'm about to go take a shower and brush my teeth. It's 9 in the morning. You should do the same. Like now. Go. Why are you still here? You about to leave? Good boy.